Thank you very much, each one of you, for being with us. A delightful and a digital travel experience. And I'm sure each one of us is going to laud the kind of effort that will go into this. Mr. Sinha, I will request you to make the opening comments uh, on why does the government think, why is the policy landscape changing about a delightful and digital experience? One hasn't really thought about that, at least in the recent past.
Supriya was exactly right to say that our sector is growing very rapidly. But even as the sector is growing, it's also clear, and particularly for all of us who are on social media right now, that there are many challenges and problems that we face along with this fast growth, particularly when we take a passenger-centric view. So what we find coming through social media, through letters, through conversations with people, that there are 5 or 6 areas that are always of concern to travelers in the aviation sector. First, I would say that people are concerned about delays, particularly because of either aircraft issues or congestion issues. So delays are a very big pain point for passengers right now. Number two, the complaint that I hear very often in social media is about refunds. A lot of people feel that refunds are not coming through as fairly as they should and as often as they should. So that is another very common complaint that we get. A third complaint that we get is that the lines are unnecessarily long. Everybody recognizes that lines will be long at certain times of the day, but people feel that we are not as efficient as we need to be when there are a lot of people early in the morning or at peak times. So lines, immigration lines, security lines, that is a big pain point as well. The number 4 issue that we hear about all the time as well is that the facilities in the airports are not what they need to be. Whether it is the food that is available there, or the toilets, or the areas to sit, or whether it is the buggies that are available, those are also complaints that we hear often. And then finally, a perennial complaint that, of course, everybody around the world has with air travel is lost baggage. So what we found that when we started to respond to customer complaints, as Shri Chaubeji was saying, very much under the inspiration and leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, that these were the common complaints that we were receiving. And because in our government, we've set a very high standard for government service, customer service, we felt that it was not good enough to just respond on an ad hoc basis, that we needed to put in place a system or some approach where we could respond to all of these issues in an institutional way, in a systematic way. And that's how we started to think about what we could do by creating something like Air Seva as a web app, as a portal, to be able to get these complaints. Now, once we began to think about Air Seva, we realized that there were 2 very important issues or problems that we would have to resolve. Number 1, unlike sectors where government is really the only sole provider, here we have many, many different players that are part of the ecosystem. And these include obviously the airlines, the airport operators, the shopkeepers who are in the airports and so on, all the different service providers. So we would have to knit all of them together, bring them all together on a common platform so that we could resolve these complaints. So that was one very big challenge that we had to overcome. The second big challenge we had to overcome was to ensure that once a complaint was received, that these complaints were appropriately resolved. And so what we've tried to do with this Air Seva app is to make sure that it is a closed loop process. That it is a closed loop process so that once a complaint is registered, then we can track that complaint end to end and ensure that within a sufficient period of time that these complaints are being resolved. So these were 2 very important aspects of the design of Air Seva that we worked on. I'm very, very happy to report, and I'll conclude with this, that as we started to discuss these issues and challenges, the problems customers are facing, and what we had to do to be able to resolve them well, that we had the wholehearted support and collaboration of everybody in the industry, everybody in the ecosystem, because everybody recognizes that it is essential for us to be able to deliver good and responsive customer service, a digital and delightful experience, so that as air travel grows, everybody is together in making sure that everybody benefits from it.
Indeed, thank you very much for your opening remarks there. But I will take this discussion forward by throwing a question at both you and the senior minister here. Is the biggest challenge going to be to significantly move the needle on, say, customer experience and not let this be a cosmetic exercise? Is that going to be the biggest challenge? I mean, your intention is very good to make the whole experience digital and to make it delightful. But is the biggest challenge going to be that?
I hope it's not going to be cosmetic, because that's something we are not looking at all. You see, we want a meaningful redressal of these grievances. A grievance by nature is not delightful, but redressal of it can push up the, what you call the satisfaction levels, that at least a complaint, which could be real, could be imaginary, could be anything, is attended to, and attended to in a reasonable time frame. And the person who has the grievance gets a response. Most often, world over, there's no response. Now, this entails a response which we think is responsible, and we think that will go down well with everyone.
That's indeed good, and you've prompted me to my next question, Mr. Sinha. If I may ask you, how will you ensure that, because the real test of something like this is really going to be in oversight and in digital redressal of any query that has been raised or any issue that has been addressed. How will you put that in place?
We have adopted a philosophy of continuous improvement, which is really, the Kaizen philosophy. And so to that end, we are going to be tracking all of the complaints, the grievances that we'll be getting. We have a dashboard through which we can see what types of complaints are we getting, who is being asked to redress these complaints. Is it an airline? Is it an airport operator? How quickly are they resolving these complaints? Where are the most number of pendencies? All of that is going to be available through a composite dashboard that we have created. Along with that, each of the service providers has identified a nodal officer who will be responsible for resolving these complaints. They will also have a dashboard, and on that dashboard they will see the complaints that they have and how these complaints are being processed. So we will look and see how we are doing in terms of resolving these complaints. And through the spirit of continuous improvement, if we are finding that there are areas where we are falling short, we will work with those service providers to ensure that they lift their performance and improve their performance. So that's really the idea. Of course, as I said, this is a collaboration platform, and so we will look to all of the different service providers to also adopt this philosophy of continuous improvement, of quality control, and really trying to improve on a day-to-day basis. The very good news is, Supriya, that most of these service providers are already working this way and have adopted this. You must have seen for many of the airports that they already have portals, they already have complaint mechanisms. So it was very easy to just take that infrastructure that already exists and apply this new system on top of it.
Because we have an airline provider right in amidst us, Mr. Lohani, the curious question is, does this add pressure on you to deliver a more delightful customer experience? And more so, has social media helped you in addressing these issues? Because the standard response from airlines is a DM or a Twitter answer or a response on Facebook. Do you believe you've been aided by social media? And more so, does something like this add the much required pressure of performance, if I may?
Definitely, Supriya. This adds to the pressure, but rightly so. It will help us to improve our systems and know the market perception. See, complaints will basically be of two types. One is a specific grievance. मेरा baggage नहीं आया, refund नहीं मिला, specific pertaining to that.
Right.
And second can be an observation. The food could have been better. The check-in counter could have been more efficient. So these two types. And what a passenger or anybody who travels, what he wants, his biggest problem is solved if he's heard. He feels that there is somebody who's hearing my complaint or hearing my observation, and who would be taking action. So I think it will serve a very, very major cause, and it will be helpful to us also, to the airlines, as well as all the sectors.
Indeed. I must say, for the benefit of the audience here, I'm sure all of you fly Air India and the rest of the airlines. Air India is the only carrier which is right now giving a full meal. Everybody else has stripped down their meal versions, but Mr. Hari Marar, you deserve an applause there. How challenging is it for an operator like you, who manages airports, to ensure a seamless user experience? The need for security, the need for check-ins is obviously a lot higher in the world that we live in today, and that kind of sometimes adds to the grievance. But is that challenging, and how do you plan to tide over some of those challenges?
In an airport environment, actually delivering services can be quite challenging, because just look at the number of multiple stakeholders that we have in an airport. You have several government agencies working in the airport, several non-governmental agencies, airlines, ground handlers, so many different agencies. And service that the passenger experiences is a sum total of all the services delivered by all these different agencies. If you look at the way a passenger travels from point A to point B, the number of agencies, the number of organizations, number of rules, number of documents that he has to deal with is multiple.
Right.
And what actually the passenger is doing is actually one single journey from point A to point B. The challenge at the airport level is to integrate all these services in a seamless fashion and present a unified, seamless front end to the consumers, while at the back end, all these stakeholders come together and furiously collaborate. I think that's the biggest challenge that we have at airports. And in this digital hyper-connected world, it is technology and digital connectivity that enables such seamless integration of services between all these different stakeholders. So we see the AirSaver as a natural extension of everything that we are trying to do at the airport as well, because while all our efforts are to try and deliver services on a digital platform, this AirSaver actually brings complaint redressal also onto a digital platform.
Right.
So it's a perfect brings about perfect synchronicity.
So just before I get onto an aircraft or I get into an airport, I actually come to someone like you, Deep, and in some sense, you really represent the beginning of the value chain as far as the user experience is concerned. What else can OTAs like yourselves do to enhance the user experience and to reduce redressal here?
Yeah, no, I think there's a big role that technology can play. I think if we all just look back 5-6 years ago, there was nothing called an e-ticket. So we all had those tickets, and everyone's familiar with them, with many kind of carbon copies and counterfiles. It was very expensive, very cumbersome. The e-ticket was one such thing which changed a lot. Today we have a mobile ticket. Many of us still take printouts to airports. The reality is we don't need to. We can enter an airport today with our mobile. I know already the powers that be, and all of them are here, are already thinking on ways that we can even go through security in a more secure manner with your mobile phone, because you have a second factor authentication, and once you have that, you can do it in other parts of the world. Soon you'll be able to do it out here too. So that will actually help that whole process we were talking about, queues coming down. If booking a ticket now takes 30 seconds, I think even making it through lines and making through this thing can come down dramatically.
Right.
And the role that we would like to play is, of course, in a very transparent manner, use the portal, use AirSaver, in fact, extend our APIs, so that any of these issues, complaints, which are to do with an OTA, are also addressed in the same manner. There's a concept called a pizza tracker.
Right.
So when you order your pizza, everyone says 30 minutes and then 20 minutes. You can. Similarly, a refund needs to be tracked in a very similar analogy. And people, like everyone has said rightfully, feel very secure when they at least know what's happening about my refund. If I'm going to get it in 4 days, tell me I'll get it in 4 days, that's fine. But let me not have to remind you on the 5th day, and then no one's listening, and is there anybody out there kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's very, very distressing for a customer, especially when it's a lot of money at stake. So I think we'd love to play a part in the entire ecosystem, and I can assure you on behalf of all the OTAs, they're all present here, that we are all geared up to participate in that.
Cancellations, delays, and refunds, I think, are some of the top 3 tick boxes, if I may, as far as the user experience is concerned. Is that going to be top of mind as well? And I think one of the points that Mr. Kalra raised there, which is about why can I not flash my phone instead of a printed boarding pass? There is too much paper from ticketing to boarding. Is the government seriously looking at doing away with that?
The government is seriously looking at all of those different areas, coming first to refunds, cancellations, and so on. we've already issued a series of notifications to ensure that there is real clarity in expectation in terms of what will be refunded and what will not be refunded. There is a very important education and awareness building aspect to this because people still see 1,000, 2,000 rupees that goes away as cancellation fee and they get really upset about it. So we have to make sure that when people book a ticket, they understand upfront what the cancellation fee is, what is going to be refunded and what is not going to be refunded, so that when they make the decision to buy a ticket, they recognize that if they were to cancel the ticket, what they have to lose. So we have to make sure that they have all the information they need before they book the ticket, so they know what risks they're taking, what fees they'll have to bear, and so on. So certainly we have a very important role to play in terms of educating and building that awareness, and then ensuring whatever is their fair and rightful refund comes back to them in a timely manner. So we are absolutely working on that. Second, with respect to this whole question of can we make the entire experience completely digital and completely seamless, that is certainly something that we are working with the industry on. You know that in Hyderabad, they've already put in place an e-boarding process that enables you to go through completely digitally without having any paper at all. So that is certainly something that I think we can put in other airports as well, and we are examining that. In addition, there's another idea that has been proposed, which we are also examining, is the notion of a secured traveler, which exists in certain other countries, where if you have been pre-screened and you are seen as somebody who is a less of a risk, then potentially you can get through lines faster. Now, obviously, there are trade-offs and concerns associated with that, but that is also something that we can consider. So all of these things become possible once we have full-scale digital tracking, digital monitoring. Mm-hmm. But once we can establish those platforms, then these other conveniences and services become possible.
Mr. Lohani, if I may ask you, we spoke about refunds and we spoke about going digital. When a flight is on time, everybody's hunky-dory, everybody takes their seats and the aircraft takes off. The problem is when there are cancellations and delays. And I think very often, at least when I go online and there are flights that are cancelled or delayed, the people are more upset about that they were not met with courtesy. The staff wasn't courteous enough, or they want refreshments and beverages that were served. Are there lessons to be learned there for airline operators like yourselves?
You're absolutely right, yes. These are typical complaints which we get. His staff was rude, and the reply was very curt. Well, actually these are symptoms of our processes. The staff, while working, should be at ease, and he should be able to deliver his work without much of a pressure. And that is a systemic reform which airlines have to do, and we especially in Air India have to do.
The reason why I asked that question was because if you actually see online, and Mr. Raju, if I can get you on this, there are generic complaints about what things could have been better, I think the point that you raised earlier, and there are very specific complaints. My bag's lost, my particular flight didn't take off, I was diverted. How is this portal going to segregate between the generic complaints that come in, which is really, the wheat and the shaft theory? How are you going to do that? Because a lot of time and effort and technology can be wasted if there are not such genuine complaints, if it's just a rant from an irritable passenger one single day.
You see, complaints will always be there. Mm-hmm. I think there's no family without a complaint. So how you address yourself to that complaint? One can be pleasant, one can be nice, one can analyze it. Probably when you analyze a complaint, it might throw up a pattern. And if it throws up a pattern, it's easier to work and solve that puzzle. So I guess we're starting now. We'll see how it goes. And scope of improvement is a continuous process. And we need to harness it and go ahead. The idea is good, that we would like to address ourselves to complaints and kind of improve on the experiences which the passengers have. After all, why do we have all this?
Right.
So that they feel better. Most passengers have something else in mind. Like it's their business, it's their holiday, it's their what have you. Now, I think the whole aviation process should make their life a little less, or rather more pleasant than unpleasant.
Mr. Sinha, one of the big things that is going to make this entire user experience enriching and digital and delightful is going to be if there was less congestion at some of our airports, and that's only going to increase given the expectation that there is for the traffic to increase. One would want to ask you, what kind of parallel plans does one have in expanding capacity across the existing airports, building new ones? I mean, I'm sure that question is bombarded at you, but it is a parallel that one draws out of a service like this.
Certainly, congestion in our airports is one of the most serious challenges that we face right now. In some ways, it's a good problem to have because it shows that there is tremendous demand for air travel, and that's indeed the reason why we are seeing congestion both in the skies as well as on the ground. And of course, what we have tried to do as a result of that is to develop a very detailed forecast, airport by airport, of the top 30 airports to understand whether it is operating our terminals more efficiently so we can add more capacity with our existing facilities, whether it is to actually build a new terminal at that same airport, or, and this is the third option, to build an entirely new greenfield airport. We've looked at all three of those alternatives to see what we can do to relieve congestion both in the air as well as in the ground handling part of it. So that is the detailed planning that is underway in the ministry right now under Raju Saab's leadership. And of course, Airports Authority of India has been doing these kinds of very detailed analyses for a long period of time. So we have some very good empirical data to back all of this up. So understanding where the traffic is going, what the forecasts are, is in fact the easiest part of all of this. What we then have to go to is to see how do we actually make these improvements on the ground. And if you're dealing with an existing brownfield asset, we have to make these improvements while, of course, we have traffic growing very quickly and a lot of people going in and out, which creates its own set of challenges. If it's a greenfield airport, the biggest challenge, of course, there is the land acquisition part and the appropriate financing that goes along with that. So it's a serious, thoughtful process that will take a long period of time to be able to really realize all the capacity we need for the next 10 or 15 years. But you can be sure that in the ministry and all the other concerned stakeholders, particularly the state governments, this is a matter that is being looked at very, very seriously.
I'm going to hand this over to you back, Mr. Sinha, and ask you to wrap up the discussion. But this also comes with a question. This is, of course, a great launch. I think every air traveler is going to give you a big thumbs up for making this entire experience delightful. What is going to be your own metric of its success? How are you going to assess it, say, in a period of 3, 4, 5, 6 months?
I know the service providers are going to hate me for this, but I want to see lots and lots and lots of complaints. So we are going to try and put up a lot of hoardings, a lot of advertisements in airports and wherever else we can, so that people can register their genuine complaints, as Mr. Lohani said, because we need those complaints to see how we can improve the system. In Japan, they have a saying which is that every defect is a treasure. So I want lots of treasure here. And because we will then understand what we need to do systemically to fix the system and make the travel experience as delightful and as digital as possible. So we really need that. I will say this is that when we were putting together Air Seva and talking to all the stakeholders, we also did some research around the world to see whether anybody else had put something like this together, a common collaborative platform for the entire ecosystem to try and improve the air travel experience. And it's interesting, we couldn't find any other such portal. So to make it successful, we need a lot of complaints. And then we need to, and this is of course the other item I'm going to track, is the closed complaints. So if indeed we find that we're getting a lot of complaints and we're closing these complaints and therefore the system is improving and people are really able to experience air travel in a way that's delightful and digital, then exactly as Mr. Kalra was saying, we will have shown that this is something that everybody in this country can use. It's an essential service, it's an important service, it's a tremendous driver of economic growth because it is so efficient, but it is also a service that works for everyone, particularly in this country where the common person does not get good customer service, where they feel कि मेरी सुनवाई नहीं होती, तो वो जो सुनवाई वाली जो समस्या है कि लोगों को लगता है कि कोई हमारी बात नहीं सुन रहा है, उसको हम लोग इस तरीके से समाप्त कर सकेंगे. अगर ये कर सकेंगे तो मैं समझता हूँ कि हम सब लोगों को लगेगा कि हम लोगों ने कुछ सफल काम किया है.
Indeed, on that note, thank you very much, each one of you, for being on this panel, and thanks for being a lovely audience. I hand it over back to the MC.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.